Hey, do you struggle with confidence, right? That's a big thing, feeling awkward during uncomfortable conversations.
If you answered no, you're lying. So just
Really?
listen up, okay? Our next guest is here to help us embrace that feeling and become our best selves. Henna Pryor is a workplace expert and TEDx speaker.
She has a new book debuting this week called Good Awkward: How to Embrace the Embarrassing and Celebrate the Cringe to Become the Bravest You. Henna, great to have you here.
Thank you
Welcome
for
to
having
Living.
me. So excited to be here.
This is fantastic.
So this is the thing, right? Because a lot of people they don't admit that they're living in the uncomfortable.
Yes.
So first is like almost realizing and accepting it, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said right at the beginning, which is if you don't feel awkward, you're lying.
Yeah.
This is not an emotion anyone gets to avoid. Even the
right.
most confident people you know experience awkwardness nearly every day. They've just learned how to embrace it and lean into it.
What is it that causes the awkward sensation? Because I think it manifests itself in different ways. I've been in awkward situations where I physically get hot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like my face is like, "Ugh," or, you know, I feel awkward and now suddenly I can't speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, awkwardness is a social emotion, which essentially means, let's say you're in your kitchen and you sing the wrong song lyric, or you call someone the wrong name in a recording. If no one was there to see it, you typically don't feel awkward. So it's a social emotion. It happens when we do something in front of other people. And typically the way I describe it when it comes to being awkward as a person is, for a moment, there is a change, there's a difference between the person we believe ourselves to be, our true selves, and what the person on display actually looked like. So who we are is different than who they see for a moment in time, or many moments in time, if we're ruminating in the shower about it for hours afterward.
Right.
But in that middle gap, there's sort of two selves at play. Our true self and the person that they saw on display.
Right.
In the middle, we feel awkward.
That's fascinating.
Sheesh.
Really, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think especially for people with jobs like ours.
Well, yeah, because you're in the public spotlight, you're putting yourself out there each and every day, right? So for something I guess I learned a long time ago was to just embrace the embarrassment, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just going to drive yourself crazy over it. So that's why I'm a fool every day, and I am who I am. But so there's the good awkward and there's embracing the embarrassment, but it's about getting there too.
Yeah, I think ultimately what it points to is awkwardness exists because of uncertainty. Right. So anyone, again, who says, I've eliminated awkwardness in my life, well, somehow you've cracked the code on eliminating uncertainty. So tell us all, because we would like to know, but you can't. And so awkwardness occurs when our expectations kind of go sideways.
Yeah.
We say this thing, we think it's going to go like that. We think we can walk down the street, all of a sudden, boom, we fall on the crack in the sidewalk. So when our expectations kind of go awry and people are seeing someone different than what we thought we were going to show up as, that emotion takes over. It can be a hot, body, could be ruminating in the shower afterwards, or for those of us who are more comfortable with it, we move through it really quickly. And our comeback rate is fast. For those of you that do this work, your comeback rate has to be fast.
Yeah.
But that's the goal. That's the goal for everyone. How do we get that comeback rate faster?
Right. So how do we then lean into this feeling of awkwardness, especially when, I'm thinking about folks who are in a job interview.
Yeah.
Or who are trying to have a serious conversation with a loved one or a peer.
Yeah.
That's awkward city.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Yeah,
Or it can be.
There's a couple things we have to think about. First thing is, do you use the term as a state or a trait? So some people will say, I feel awkward right now, but it'll pass. Yeah. I'm going into a negotiation, I'm going to a job interview, it's new, I don't know how it's gonna go, I can't control other people's reactions. That's awkwardness as a temporary trait. Other people use the word as a state. I am awkward. I am socially awkward, right? And when you use it as such an identity marker, it becomes very difficult to move through those feelings quickly because you've identified yourself as a certain type of person. What's interesting in the research is there's no such thing as a factually awkward person.
Okay.
It's subjective, it's an opinion. It's up to us to decide. So first, how are you talking about yourself?
Yeah.
Is it a state or is it a trait? Start with that.
And that's the start to building the confidence, right?
Sure, just understanding is the start, and then we can go through all the different tools.
Yeah, because there's always going to be those uncomfortable, awkward conversations when it comes to love or whatever it may be. If you have to converse with somebody rather than do it through a text or a email or whatever it may be. How do you get there to have that conversation face to face?
So I love that you brought this point up because I think this is the key of the timeliness of this. We are a society that has optimized for smoothness in dating, at work, right? So we come to somebody's doorbell, we don't ring it, we say here, right? We want to order food. We don't call. We order it online. My husband the other day, it was funny, I laughed because the online ordering wasn't working and he said, well, what other restaurant are we going to use?
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, wait. I wanted the tacos, right? We're going to call instead. So, this is a little bit of the challenge that we face. And so what we need to do is condition our social muscles. What's happening is we're starting to lose our social fitness because the world is not set up in a way that we need to keep those muscles active. So first step is build the awareness. What are the stories you tell yourself? What are the conditioning that you had growing up around these social interactions and how you should feel? Awkwardness is based on approval. It's a social emotion.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then once you've sorted that out, how do you start to condition your muscles, just like you do in the gym? Can you create reps in your social fitness so that when the moment does come to tell someone something, it's not the first time. You've been there before.
It sounds like there is a fine line between awkwardness and fear.
Yes.
You know, I'm thinking into the deep recesses of my brain where I've had really challenging conversations. And the ramp up to those conversations, I'm like, this is fear. And in my mind, I'm like, fear is not fact.
Yes.
And then I go in and I'm like, you know, I kind of fall to pieces. Where does awkwardness end and fear begin? Are the two related? Am I creating this?
No,
in my
of course.
head?
I think all emotions of discomfort have relatives, right? So emotions like vulnerability, like fear, they are very closely related. It really just depends on the degree of emotional exposure. So vulnerability is a little higher on the degree of emotional exposure. Something can be awkward, but you don't feel quite like you put your whole heart on the line or your feelings out there. Again, fear can be all sorts of things. You can have fear of awkwardness. That is something that exists all the time.
Right.
Is that you?
Yeah.
It's so interesting too, well, because we're people on TV that people think, oh well, they're not awkward. You know, we walk off here and I'm the most awkward person in the world.
Too.
Right.
I mean, really, I like to believe that. Because I'll go home and I'll stew on something for days.
You don't even know. Years.
Years. I'm still stewing on something from years ago. You know, but so how do you get between the over that and you're talking about the fine line between awkward and fear, but there's awkward and people pleasing at the same time.
Yeah, I love actually that you brought that up because people pleasing is not love. We
That's
think
right.
that it's love. It's fear.
It's fear.
Right? It's fear of losing someone else's approval. And so, again, peeling back those layers on what are the stories we told ourselves growing up about what other people think of us. Awkwardness is interesting because it doesn't really exist before age 8 or 9. So it's a self-conscious emotion. If you've got little people in your life, you know, they don't care. They're in the kitchen just dancing.
He
and
has a 1-year-old. She is
Carefree.
dancing through life.
Clothing optional, like they don't care, right? And about 8 or 9, we start to become self-conscious. We start to realize, oh, other people are watching, and we start to look for who we are through the lens of what other people see. And so starting to examine those childhood messages is a great step one to avoid that inaction that comes from, I'm afraid I might be awkward. What are the stories you've told yourself? Can you unpack them first? Then you can start to move through steps, conditioning, kind of those reps to unpack what's holding you back.
And then read your book, Henna Pryor.
Yes.
Please come back and visit us.
I would love to.
Oh my gosh, we have
Fantastic.
a copay for you. The name of the book, Good Awkward, is out for release tomorrow. You can find it wherever you get your books.